This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
All right, we're going to start off this Sunday with a little goodness from a comedian by the name of Mike Goodwin.
My grandma says the only two things in life that you worry about, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. If you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to get better, whether you're going to get worse. You get better, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get worse, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to live, whether you're going to die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got two things. Whether you're going to heaven, whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things to worry about. Original or extra crispy?
Oh my gosh. Is that not true?
We needed that.
Who was that? That was Mike Goodwin?
That was Mike Goodwin, uh-huh.
I'll tell you what, he's right. What happens is, and what we just heard him do, worry multiplies.
It does, though.
It really does. It's just, if you give it an inch, it'll start franchising.
Yeah.
Think about it. It'll just start franchising if you give it an inch. So you start the night with one reasonable thought. Hey, are we going to be okay? And by 3 a.m., you're wide awake doing compound entrance math on a chicken sandwich wrapper. And the question is,
that's a very specific visual.
Or extra tasty crispy? Which one was it? And which one is going to break the bank, right? That's what it comes down to. Because at that point in time, you're like, oh my gosh, but if I get the extra tasty crispy, I could have a health issue. And a health issue really is a financial issue. And that's how it happens, guys. We always deal with that. It's not as Americans. We just deal with that as the human race. Yeah. We have it. So, but if you think about that, worry does multiply. One of the greatest things that I was taught, it was probably, I don't know, it wasn't in the very beginning of my career. I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago. One of the things I learned, it was right after the .com bust had really kind of come down, and then it started moving up. What I realized was after that, it was, we need to control the things we can control.
That's
when it comes down to, especially when we're planning for retirement. Now, there's one thing, if you're a 30 or 40-year-old, and you're saving money, you're making okay money. It may not be all you want to do, or it may not be the career path you want, but you're doing fine. You can put some money away. Worries are a little bit different then. That question, then for a lot of people say, hey, am I going to find the right person? If I do have kids, how many should I have? How many can we afford? All those kind of things. But when it comes to retirement, there are essentially five things that we have to do. We have to plan for, and we have to plan for them, get this, in a particular order. If we do that, not only will worry, at least about retirement, it won't multiply. Yeah. It may not even get past the thought of that fear in the first place. Okay. That's it. Okay. That is it. There are 5 cornerstone pillars of retirement that if we get right, we don't even have to be perfect. It's not about making the perfect choice or the perfect investment or the perfect tax strategy or the perfect trust. It has nothing to do with that. We just want to make certain we're not making poor choices. Right. Or that if we do make a poor choice, we want to make sure we don't repeat that. That's what it comes down to. Okay. So the 5 things that everyone has to have so that we don't have that multiplying worry, especially at 3 a.m. on a chicken sandwich wrapper. Number 1, protection. How much of our money that we've saved? We saved $1 million. Awesome. How much of it can we not afford to lose? One of the things that Warren Buffett says and has said repeatedly, you can't afford to risk money that you can't afford to lose. Yep. If you can afford to lose that money, okay, you can risk it. But if you can't afford to lose it, and what do I mean you can't afford? It means that if you lost that money, you couldn't create the income to stay retired or to stay in your home or to live in that neighborhood or to pay your property taxes. That's what it means. Yep. So number 1, we have to have a certain level of protection. That really doesn't have anything to do with the investments. It just has to do with how are we protected? Do we have it in the bank? Or is it guaranteed? Is it insured? Is it a guaranteed income stream? Is it a pension? Is it an annuity payment? Is it our Social Security? Whatever that is protected. We need to know that that is enough for us to live our life. So protection is number 1. Then we move down. So that's the first one. If we get protection right, man, we are on our track. Number 2, how much income do we really need? Now, it's not like I would love to have $15,000 a month. Well, some people that wouldn't even get close to paying their current bills, and other people they're like almost in awe. Oh my gosh, $15,000 a month! Man, I could live like the Sultan. forever. Well, for everyone, it's about what is the amount you have to have. What is your income floor, the worst, so that not just so that we're not living in a refrigerator box, but we want to make sure we have enough to maintain a dignity and a quality of life that we want to have, right? So that's the floor. But then let's say that we do want to front load retirement. We want to knock off some bucket list items. We do want to take that Norwegian cruise. We do want to do a Viking River cruise. We have never seen Italy. Our family's from Italy. We've never seen it. How can we not? We have to go see Italy. I want our clients to do that in the front of the retirement, because that is often the youngest and the healthiest that they're often going to be.
Right.
And what was it that Mike Goodwin was talking about? Oh, you only got two things to worry about. Am I going to be okay or am I going to die? Right. And then if you're going to be okay, you got two things to worry about, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So income. What are those things that we can do to really give us a great quality of life? So that's income. So once we have our protection down and we get our income right, we know the worst amount of income that we can accept. So we design the plan to achieve that. Okay. But then we know if we want an extra 25 or 30 grand a year for the first 7 or 8 years of retirement, that's not usually a problem for most people. Okay. I was talking last week with a couple. They were worried that they couldn't even retire. I showed them that they could have $70,000 more a year than they thought that they would even need.
That's amazing.
And what did that allow them to do? It let them dream for the first time in a long time. Instead of being fearful, they said, hold on, you mean that we can do that Viking River cruise? And I could also rescreen the back porch, and we could actually upgrade that zero-turn lawnmower that he was constantly having to fix in the shop all the time. Well, yeah. And that wouldn't even put a dent really on that 1 year's worth of extra income. Guys, it makes a huge difference. So that income is what we want to get right, because income is the outcome we need to have for retirement. Yep. So number 1, protection. Number 2, income. Number 3, tax strategy. This is the one that I see most overlooked by even skilled advisors all the time. Okay. It's not because they're doing anything wrong. They just often work for a big firm who does not allow them to do tax design, to actually plan for taxes. And it's okay. You see it at the bottom of all their disclaimers. We do not practice tax or give legal advice. You must consult your tax person, legal person, blah, 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 blah. That's fine and good and all. But many of us, when we're thinking, well, but should I do this? Is there going to be a tax consequence? Am I going to have to pay the government more after this? You want to make sure that the tax strategy is right for you, because there are a lot of loopholes out there. There's a lot of ways that you can save money that are terrible for most people. And there are some things that people have never heard of that don't seem that big of a deal, but when they compound over 20 years, we're talking tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings, right? So that third one is tax strategy. We want to keep more of that money that we've saved in our pockets. We want to keep it out of Uncle Sam's pockets. We want it to go to us. And here's what I typically say about that. The reason why we want to do that is because I don't like my clients paying for long-term care events. I think that long-term care is very expensive, and I would love to just for the tax savings to potentially offset the cost of long-term care. Yep. That would be a huge one, because that's also on the list. But the tax strategy alone often provides clients, if they don't want to travel more or they don't want to give a huge old pile of money to the kids, it at least then gives them the dignity to know that, hey, I got enough money from tax savings to cover my long-term care. Yeah. Right. And that's number 4. Number 4 is long-term care. How do we, or not long-term care, but health expenses? How do we cover healthcare costs? Because this happened to my parents. This happened to my dad. My dad had a stroke right before he turned 70, but he didn't pass away. He lived for 8 more years. And unfortunately, my mother could not take care of him by herself. So they had to blow through nearly $500,000 of his money that he had saved in his IRA, that he had saved for both of them. He had to use that money to take care of him in home because my mom couldn't handle him and couldn't handle the idea of him being in a government or a facility. So they blew through that money. Now, what did that do? It was a compound. It was a double punch in the face. Not only did they have to spend that money, so they couldn't use it for retirement. My mom couldn't use it after he passed. They paid a lot more taxation on it because they pulled it out of a retirement account when they'd already had other income. Got it. And it bumped them up to higher tax brackets. And then they got double punched. So when I looked back at that math much later in life, I was like, oh my gosh, that was potentially one of the most devastating things that could have happened to someone. And it happened to my own family. I know. So that's the healthcare part. So if we can find ways just by doing proper tax planning to offset that, that changes many people's financial lives. Okay. And the last one is wealth transfer. Once we're gone, and most people think it's an estate plan once we're both gone. No, the first time we transfer wealth is unfortunately when one spouse passes away and we have a surviving spouse. Yep. They're usually in a worse tax environment. They usually have lost an asset or an income stream, if nothing else, just a bucket of Social Security. and they're in a different position. So we want to make certain that not only are we good while we're alive and we're retired, that we can do the things we want with dignity, that a surviving spouse is taken care of, but then it doesn't still go to the government later. It goes to who we want it to go to. We don't have kids, it's fine. What church do you want it to go to? What civic organization? What group of people do you think are well suited for you to give that gift to? Those are the things we want to establish. And if we do all 5 of those, protection, income, tax planning, wealth transfer, and healthcare, if we do all 5, guys, that worry won't multiply. As a matter of fact, it may eliminate it as soon as you've thought through, how does your plan accomplish all 5 of those things? Done correctly, that is the retirement solution.
Do you have these 5 pillars covered for your retirement plan? At J. Hagan Capital, John and his team, they are here to help you review your savings so that you can have a clearer understanding. Give us a call. Let's get to work on this review. Number you're dialing, 502-317-0840. You can give us a call right now to set a time on the calendar. You can also send a text to that same number, and we will text you back a link to our calendar so you can pick an appointment time that works best for you and schedule it right there from your phone. Just text the word plan to that same number. 502-317-0840. Call right now to set a time on the calendar or text the word plan to that number and we will text you a link to our calendar. 502-317-0840. You can also go to our website. It's retirementsolutionradio.com or the number to dial right now is 502-317-0840. There is a plethora, a cornucopia, a super abundance of information out there, but how much of it is actually relevant to the good men and women of Louisville, John? That's what we want to break down.
Yeah. So, the whole idea is like, there's all kinds of information out there. We live in the information age. We live in the AI information age. There's nothing we can't find. The question is, number one, is it accurate?
Right. How
number
much
two,
truth?
is it accurate for us? And number 3, does it solve any of the things that we actually want to achieve? There are so many things that my kids say, oh my gosh, Dad, this is so awesome. It's so awesome. This AI does this and this and this and this. I'm like, that's awesome. Did you want to do any of that before you saw that ad or that article or that thing? No. I'm like, right. So it's kind of a moot point. Doesn't really matter. But I tell you one thing, AI is going to change a lot of things in our lives. It's going to make a lot of things better. Frankly, I think it's going to make a lot of other things more challenging. So that's the whole thing. How over the next 10 years are we going to figure out how to unpackage all this AI stuff, extrapolate it, use it wisely, but then not get messed up in the process?
That's what you're here to help us do. Let's not get messed up by technology, particularly when it comes to our money, particularly when it comes to our money in retirement, sir.
Yes, that's wise.
Let's dig in and talk about some of the tech things we're seeing in the markets.
Yeah.
So for the past several years, we've been talking about, you have heard about the Magnificent 7 tech stocks that have fueled the market. Now Wall Street is talking about the Fab 10.
Ooh, okay, we get a new one.
Yep, it goes beyond the Meta, the Amazon, the Apple. It also, the Fab 10 now includes the Mag 7 Plus, SpaceX, OpenAI, and Anthropic. And more tech, as we can only expect it to, leads the way. Wealth manager Jason Katz was on Fox Business, and he was giving out this warning. This is Jason Katz.
Investors need to stop being so myopic about technology. They need a plan B. I'm not implying you want to sell those winners, but you can't let them become your entire portfolio. So we're taking a barbell approach and looking to the more cyclical parts of the market that are exceedingly more exciting, even though they're boring, and I think are much cheaper.
It's a fine line, though, John. We don't want to miss out on the growth that tech sectors, the Mag 10, or so the Fab 10, the Mag 7 can give us.
Sure.
For somebody, though, who's getting closer to retirement, the folks that you work with, they've got to think proactively about their risk levels. He brought up a plan B. What does a plan B look like for somebody whose retirement portfolio is heavily concentrated in one sector or another? How do we unpack this?
Well, number one, I don't know that many people truly know exactly what's in their mutual funds or their ETFs. I just really don't think that that's the case. If you think about it, if you look at it right now, roughly 33% of the S&P 500 is in those Mag 7 stocks or whatever they're going to call it, the Fab 10, whatever it is. 33%. So if you own the S&P 500, guess what, guys? You own like 33% of the Mag 7. And then, of course, SpaceX is the only one that's traded right now. OpenAI is going to have an IPO. And then, of course, Anthropic will have their IPO. Those haven't been listed yet. Once they do, my guess is close to 38% of your portfolio is already going to be in those.
Okay.
And here's the craziest thing to me. People act like this has never happened before.
Okay.
Never in the world has this ever happened where such great technology is going to change the entire world until you actually go back and look at history. When you go back and look at history, here's the craziest thing. We have seen this exact thing before, and it made total sense. So I'm going to go back and see if you can think about, if you're out there listening, think about what period of time this was. When investors fell in love with great companies, well-run companies, wonderful businesses, all United States, blue chip darlings, if you will, like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Disney, IBM, Xerox, Polaroid. As a matter of fact, they said that once you buy these, you buy them once and you never sell them. You should never sell them. These are generational assets. You should absolutely do that. They actually called those, and there were 50 of these, they called them the Nifty 50. And a lot of people say, well, hold on. That doesn't, I may have heard it. I can't remember. Have I heard it, John? Was that during the dot-com bust? No, it actually wasn't. This was in the 1970s, 1972, 1974. This is when we had the Nifty 50, and all of these companies, they were all doing remarkably well. Coca-Cola was doing great. IBM was leading the world in almost everything there was under the sun. Disney was talking about, they had their movies, but now they were talking about putting together Disney World. This was like the great idea that became almost all of Orlando, Florida now. This is where it all started. And everyone said, hey, not only do you have to own these things, and this is exactly what Katz was just saying. Katz said, I'm not telling you to trim these positions yet, but you can't have too much of your portfolio owning these things.
Right.
But everyone thought this. The Nifty 50, why would you own anything else? Well, here's the thing, guys. The Nifty 50 was so great. The forever stocks were so widely held that at one point in time, the market just turned. Now, it wasn't that these companies were bad. Had people held on to them for 25 years, they would have done really well. But here's the problem. Heather, in 1974, the market went down. It didn't go down just a little bit. It went down 45%. But here's the big one. Even though the market, the S&P, went down 45%, the Nifty 50 on average went down 68%. As a matter of fact, the top 5 stocks went down 70 to 80%. 70 to 80% down in 1974. Now, most of them eventually recovered. Most of them did. But do you know how long, Heather, it took?
I have no idea, but I feel like it's
on
not
average,
good.
17 years. 17 years to get back to even of when you started in 1972 or 73 or 74, whenever you put the money in.
Yeah.
And these were the companies that no one ever said you should never sell these. These are generational assets. These are perfect. Why would you ever want to sell these? And yet, it took you nearly 16 years to get back to even in the best companies out there. Here's the question. The question is this, and this is kind of what Katz was saying. Mm-hmm. How much of our livelihood, how much of our money, our life savings are in those Mag 7 or the Fab 10 or whatever they're going to call these things now? How much is in there? Because at some point in time, regardless of how good the company is, it's just kind of expensive. You know, in my family, we always drove Japanese cars, Toyotas primarily, Hondas, Nissans. Why? Because Japanese car quality was really good back in the day. They weren't the sleekest vehicles, but darn it, when you got in it, they would turn on. They would get you to point A to point B. They were a little bit more expensive than the American counterparts, but they worked. They always worked. And so many people had those. That's what we had. But so even though we did that, would there have been a price that Toyotas would have gotten? My family would have said, whoa. As much as I love, the quality of Toyota, I don't think that I want to spend $82,000 for a Camry, right? If it had been that expensive, it would have been bad. But once you own that Camry, you never have to get rid of it, man. You'd never have to do it. But still, there's a price that it doesn't make sense. And I think what Katz is saying is, hey, I'm not telling you to get rid of all these positions, but maybe you want to think about how you're balancing it in your portfolio, because maybe it's gotten to a point where the prices are just kind of high and it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And that's the whole point. So when we look at our own portfolios, even if we own the S&P 500, 33% of it is in those 7 companies. If those do go down, and we have two historical examples, 1973 to 1974 downturn, and then the dot-com bust, where the top companies went down somewhere between 70 and 90%. Now, during the Nifty 50 period of time, Polaroid was one of the biggest high flyers. It was down 91%. It actually never recovered. Polaroid actually never recovered. Kodak actually did, but many of the other ones didn't. So the question is, when's the last time you looked under your hood in your portfolio? Do you know how much of that S&P 500 or that NASDAQ you own, or those ETFs you own? Because I hear people say all the time, Heather, and maybe you've even said it or heard it. You've heard people say, well, John, I've got 8 or 9 funds. I'm totally diversified. And yet when you look at what's in all those funds, It's like 70 to 80% the same.
A lot of overlap.
Right?
Something else that I've heard also is that if you're married to a spouse who, both of you have careers and you both have saved your 401ks, check the overlap between the two of you. And that's even more shocking.
We see it's unreal. Even though someone may have 12, 13, 14 holdings in their portfolio, about 70% of the portfolio is basically all the same. You could almost just hold 3 funds,
right?
If that's a diversification you're looking for. So unfortunately, and I mean, the good word is diversification, to be properly diversified. Unfortunately, so many of us, it's just hard to know. Things have changed so much, but so much of what we own isn't really well diversified. And if we do have a downturn, and I'm not saying we were, Katz isn't saying we are either, but if we do have a downturn, things are kind of pricey right now. And the question is, when over time it rebounds? At some point, my assumption is it would rebound. How long is it going to take? If it takes a year or two, that would be painful, but we could live through it. And if we're in our 30s or 40s, no big deal. It's just kind of a blip. But if we're about to retire, or we just retired, or we're pulling income from our portfolios, now that changes things a lot. Because if it does take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get back to even, I'm not even saying 12 or 15 or 20. I'm just saying, well, if it takes 4 or 5 years where we're pulling money out as that portfolio is beaten up, guys, unfortunately, that's how people run out of money. So again, I think that it's genius for us to own good American companies that create money and create profitability and create jobs, and they're front runners and leaders in their industries. But we really do need to take a look. How much of it do we own and at what price? Because it could be a great opportunity for many of us, even if we don't eliminate those positions. Put stop losses on there. Put guardrails. You can use things like principal protected notes or structured notes where you can still own that stock. You can still own that. But you can put safety nets on the downside so you just don't lose too much. If the market goes down 40 or 50, maybe you're only down 8 to 10. And those are things that your advisor can talk to you about. That's certainly things that we talk about with our clients in our office every day. How can we get those good things but not overpay and just be hammered when things go against us? Because we're in a weird part of the economy. We want to get it right. So if you're not sure, if you need a second opinion, call our team. This is what they do. They're trained this way because this is what I look at my own portfolios. How much do I have? How much is appropriate? How much do I want to protect at this point? And then if this sucker does go to the moon, at what point in time do I want to put more safety nets on and or liquidate some and or tax loss harvest or tax gain harvest? Those are smart ways to be tax savvy, even more thinking about diversification and risk adjustment. So think about that.
I don't have to tell you. There are plenty of things that we can do with our money. There are plenty of ways to invest our wealth. But financial author David Bach, he was on the Mel Robbins podcast, and he was saying to Mel, he sees 2 escalators to wealth. This is David Bach.
They are real estate and stocks. You have to own real estate and you have to own stocks. And this market's now more rigged than it's ever been. And when I say rigged, what I mean is everything in our country is designed for those 2 asset classes to go higher. All the tax laws, all the incentives, all the opportunities that exist are for investors. If you're not an investor, you are being left behind faster than you've ever been left behind.
If you are not invested in stocks or real estate, you are being left behind faster than you have ever been left behind, at least according to this guy's opinions, John.
I think that is 100% accurate.
Do you?
I think Bach is 100% correct on this one.
Okay. All right. Well, for people that are close to retirement, though, and they hear something like that, they are invested in stocks, as we've been taught to do, right? What are our 401k options? You invest in the market. You've seen great growth, particularly over the last decade. It can feel a little nerve-wracking to have so much risk headed towards to retirement, and none of us want to be landlords. John, can you imagine that phone ringing at 2 a.m. when you're 72 years old, the toilet's overflowing at the property that you've got rented 20 minutes outside of town? No, thank you.
And that's, by the way, that's exactly how it works.
I know.
For many years, I have owned rental real estate and Airbnbs, in vacation areas. And on paper, it looks fabulous. I have someone else paying my rent, essentially paying my utilities and paying off my mortgage. Is I am just quietly collecting cash and so forth. That's the way that they always spin it. Here's the truth. What they're going to do is they're going to take their 700-pound luggage up and down your stairs and nearly destroy all of the woodwork on your railings, on your walls, on your landings, because people rent these vacation vacation homes, and they rent these things to bring their kids and their grandkids. Why? Because they don't want their grandkids at their house jacking up their stuff. They would much rather go ahead and go to someone else's house that may be a little bit more close to the beach and or the golf course or the pool area, and they would much rather jack your house up. I'm not talking 100% from experience. Actually, yes, I am. And then on top of that, they're going to crank the AC down to 60.
Why wouldn't they?
While they have all of the windows and doors open for an entire week. And when you get your electric bill, you're going to look at that sucker and you're going to say, how on earth did $3,300 get spent on gas and electric in this 1 month? And I just explained it. But this is all for the sake of doing well, right?
Yes.
Being prosperous.
That's it.
Adding
The
to our
American way.
portfolio and our net worth. That's the Merca. Yeah. But having said that, there are a few things that I have done better on over the course of my life than equities and real estate.
Right.
That's literally it. Now, I'm also a business builder. I build businesses, and I've had good success doing that too. But the truth is that is always hands-on, 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 hands-on. In real estate, in equities, you don't have to always be hands-on to do well in the long run. So I think that David Bach is not only right, I think that we all still have to look at owning. He says either or. I think you need both because you always want some form of diversification. And there are periods of time when equities really do outperform real estate, and there's other periods of time where real estate really outperforms equities. If you do them in tandem, if you do them together, we just end up being a lot better when it comes down to growing our portfolio and our net worth in the long run. Yeah. Right? So that's a big deal.
John, you and your team obviously have lots of experience helping people with both of these kinds of assets, between owning land, between owning market investments. If you've got questions about how to manage these things, how to invest in these things in your retirement portfolio through your retirement, John and his team, they're here to help you take a look at that. The number is 502-317-0840. You can call or send a text to that number to schedule an appointment. Start the conversation with John and his team. 502-317-0840. We're also online, retirementsolutionradio.com. You just painted the picture of what it really is to own rental properties. We do have to be smart about our market investments in retirement. We still need the growth opportunities, though. So what then can retirees do as we get into this next phase of life? How do you help folks? How do you guide them? What do you suggest? Are there other growth opportunities? Are there investments that we're not discussing here that we need to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there is a middle ground, right, between doing what I'm doing, which is, owning the property, hiring a management company to kind of deal with things when I'm not there. And then hopefully we have some profitability at the end of the year. And the things that we don't have profitability on, often we can get some tax breaks for those, by expensing things and or properly deducting expenses against the property. So those can be very attractive. But believe me, I know when we're in our 60s and 70s and maybe even very early 80s, the last thing we want to think about is dealing with all of that nonsense. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to own properties or real estate, right? So there's a lot of things that exist out there. You can use REITs, real estate investment trusts, which are good, and they're turnkey. You invest in them just like you can invest in real estate, just like you can invest in a mutual fund. I mean, most people are aware of that, but there are some new techniques or some new, evolution of products out there where we can use ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are very inexpensive usually. They are very tax favorable. They can be passed down generation to generation, potentially with a lower amount of tax compared to some other things. They don't require the upkeep and maintenance and tax structures that a lot of other things do. They don't require any legal work. And frankly, they do quite well. Now, some of them, you can even put barriers on them or buffers. And all this means is you can actually protect your downside. Because a lot of people forget, right? So in 2008, when we had the Great Recession, all of a sudden, there was no bank lending. People were frozen out of being able to buy homes. People couldn't sell homes. Homes decreased in value a lot. I don't even remember the numbers. I think Vegas, the average Vegas real estate was down like 45 or 55%. Yeah. To where even today, there are some vacancies that have kind of been out there in Vegas since like 2008. I mean, that bad.
Got it.
Some pockets were like that. So you can actually put protections on some of these things and still own real estate. Now, we've only been focusing on real estate. Yeah. But guys, we can do the exact same thing with stocks. We can actually have protection so that we can still achieve the upside, but we can have some limited downside, or we can have lesser exposure, or we can choose our safety net threshold, where if we only want to, let's say, risk 12 to 13%, We can literally do that. We can do that with a buffer. We can do that with options. We can do that with barriers. We can do that with structured notes. We can do that with all kinds of things. You can do it with some insured accounts that are literally insured against loss. Actually, you can do them with certificates of deposit, CDs. Many of them call them market-linked CDs, or MLCD.
Okay.
Those things exist. Where literally it's like, hey, you're not going to get all the upside of stocks, but you may be able to get up to 7 or 8 or 9% to the upside. But what happens if things go down? Well, it's a certificate of deposit. It's guaranteed and insured by the FDIC. That's not so bad for some people. It gives you the upside exposure without all the downside risk. And there's pros and cons to all those things. It's not like that product is so perfect, but those are good things. So as we go into retirement, the question is, do we have a lot of real estate already? Is that what we should be owning? Should we start diversifying that now? Should we start to wind that down? If we do, how do we keep more of that money in our pocket? How do we not give 20% capital gains plus recapture of depreciation plus all those things? How do we not give that to the government? That is probably the key. It's not that we should own real estate. Is that how do we own it effectively so we pay the least amount in taxes on it, get to utilize it when we want to, but then sell it and maybe do better? We can use certain types of trusts to accomplish that. We can also structure them differently with the way we title things, that we can change even more things. Now that gets very complicated. So that's if you have properties out there and you're thinking about selling them or divesting or maybe even packaging them all up. Maybe you own several different properties, strip malls, things like that. You want to package them up and have a family limited liability company or a family limited trust where it can then govern everything. And when you're gone, your kids just step right in. And then your grandkids just step right in from there. That is essentially the easiest version of a dynasty trust. We look at these all the time because they make a ton of sense. Or maybe you have a ton of stock in a company that you love and you really don't want to sell it. But the main thing is that you would consider divesting some of it if it wasn't such a big tax bill. You can use some trusts that are well designed to achieve no taxation when you make that sale of that asset. And we're going to pay taxes at some point in time, but there's all kinds of ways we can mitigate that future tax bill done correctly.
Okay.
So as we age, one of the big things is to think of, it's not about a new time to get into real estate or a new time to get into different equities. The question is, hey, with what you own, what is the best way to own it now? What is the best way that won't have the headaches, the sleepless nights, the cold, clammy hands when we're thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if interest rates go up again? Or what happens if the market falls apart? Or what happens if these people, mess my house up and they don't pay the bill, and they don't pay to fix it and they don't give me rent? Am I going to go under, right? So the main thing is that what can be done to protect your assets and then get them in a place where we can be more tax efficient when we choose to unwind it and or when we give it to the next generation. Those are the big pieces of the puzzle. David Bach is right on equities and real estate are the two great fast tracks. I say fast tracks. They're not fast, but they're the fastest tracks for long-term wealth. The question is, once we've built it, how do we hold on to more of it? That's the bigger piece of the puzzle, and that's what our team does every day in the office.
Let's begin the conversation helping you understand about your plan, your money, your future. It's retirementsolutionshow.com or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.